All right, so this is 4.3, values of trigonometric functions, which is really just very similar to 4.2. So let's just jump into it. So here it says, given the figure, find sine, cosine, and tangent of 30 degrees. So it gives us a figure. It's a little bit blurry, so I'm going to kind of sketch it out. Remember, we're going to focus on this triangle. We have our angle of perspective, which is 30 degrees. I see that I have this point right here, which is square root of 3, 1, right? Which tells us that the x value, so remember that this is the origin, right? Right here, so the x value, or the distance horizontally, is the square root of 3. And the vertical distance, or the y value, is 1. So it tells us, it's also telling us that r is equal to 2. So it gives us all this information, and then we just have to find sine, cosine, and tangent. Well, some old hippie caught another hippie tripping on acid, right? Sine of my 30-degree angle, so sine of 30 degrees, because we're always saying the trig function of an angle, sine of an angle, cosine of an angle, tangent of an angle, right? It's 30 degrees in this case, so sine of 30 degrees would be the opposite, right? We have, let me change my color here. We have opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse. All right, so 1 over 2. Here, they want the cosine. Cosine of 30 degrees is equal to the adjacent square root of 3 over the hypotenuse, 2. And then tangent of 30 degrees is equal to the opposite, 1 over the adjacent square root of 3. Like I said before, this is not considered proper mathematics to leave your answer like that. We would normally need to rationalize the denominator. I'll just give you an example of doing it, but I don't feel like in the book it doesn't ever do it for this curriculum, so I'm guessing you probably don't need that, but I'll just do it because it's unsettling for me. So 1 over square root of 3, it's not considered proper because you have a square root in the denominator. So normally you wouldn't want to leave your answer like that if you're trying to get the exact answer. If you're just getting a decimal approximation, just put it in your calculator, hit enter. It's going to tell you what it is. But if you want the exact answer, you don't want to leave the square root in the denominator, so you multiply by the square root of 3, because in the numerator and in the denominator, when you multiply in the denominator, square root of 3 times the square root of 3, it just becomes 3. That's why we're doing it, to get the square root out of the denominator. So the easiest way to do that is just to multiply by that same square root. And then in the numerator, it's the square root of 3. So this is the exact answer for tangent, right? That's the exact answer. But if you're just putting it in your calculator, just 1 over square root of 3, hit enter, and it'll give you the approximation. All right, so pretty straightforward, just like what we were doing before. Same thing here. You got it says find sine, cosine, and tangent of 60 degrees. Well, we got this triangle. It tells me that now I have this point 1 square root of 3. So this is 1, this is the square root of 3. I'm not going to bother with this. I feel like you could do that. Keep moving. 45 degrees. So there's a reason it's doing this. On the unit circle, which is kind of where I feel like this is going, you want to find increments of 30 degree and 45 degrees. So we'll just see where it's going. But if the increments of 30 degrees, right, first it said 30 degrees, then the next increment of 30 degrees is 60 degrees. And so increments of 30 degrees and increments of 45 degrees, which is here. So here is saying tangent of 45 degrees. If we kind of sketch this out, we're saying that this is 45 degrees. It tells us that we have this point right here, 1, 1. So that means that this is 1, this is 1. And then they give us the hypotenuse is the square root of 2. So I feel like you'd be able to do that. I'll just do it real quick. Sine is equal to, or the sine of 45 degrees is equal to 1 over square root of 2, right? That's the approximate, or that'd be the, it's not proper, but I'll just leave it like that. Cosine of 45 degrees is equal to also 1 over the square root of 2. And then tangent of 45 degrees is equal to 1. All right, so keep it moving. Here, they're just going over this stuff. Sine, cosine, tangent, 30, 60. Those are the 30-degree increments. And then 45 degrees. All right, so let's see where else this is going. Using a calculator, find the tangent value of 67.36 degrees. All right, so in your calculator, it's a pretty straightforward process. If you have your calculator with you, go ahead and pick it up. Unfortunately, I'm not about to be able to show you all this, but I'll just tell you it's pretty straightforward, right? The first thing you want to do is hit the mode button. In your calculator, it should say mode. And then if you scroll down some, you should see a choice between degrees and radians. You want to make sure, because we're talking about degrees here, you need to make sure that you're in degree mode, right? You have your mode set to degree. Once you do that, I mean, it's as simple as just saying tangent or tan, and then you hit 67.36 in your calculator. So tangent 67.36 in your calculator. Here, notice they gave us 4 significant digits, 67.36. So I'm going to give them back the same, 2.398. All right, and that would be the length of, that's the tangent of 67.36 degrees. So it's pretty straightforward. Notice here, all right, it's saying find our angle. So in this last problem, they gave us the angle. Right here, we have the angle. It's in degrees, right? But in this new problem, they're saying, hey, cosine of some angle is equal to 0.3527. Find the angle. Now, anytime you have to find an angle, that indicates that you're going to be using inverse. All right, inverse function. So, it's kind of like this, right? So we have cosine of some angle equals 0.3527. If you want to get the goal here is to solve for the cosine, right? I want to solve for the angle, not for the cosine. I want to solve for the angle. So right now it's locked in with this cosine. To unlock it, I do the opposite. If the opposite of a cosine is the inverse of it, right? So that means I take the inverse cosine, which denotes, like this, right, of this. The inverse cosine and the regular cosine kind of undo each other, and you're just left with the angle. But whatever you do to one side, you got to do the same thing to the other side. So the inverse cosine of this side gives you cosine inverse of 0.3527. You just put that in your calculator. The inverse is if you hit second first and then you hit cosine. So you hit the second button, the blue button, if you got a TI-84. All right, second, and then cosine, and you should see that little 1 up there, which is not a negative exponent. It denotes inverse, right? This means inverse So, and then you just put 0.3527, and that gives us our angle. It gave us 4 significant digits. We're going to give it the same, so 69.35. And we're talking about an angle. Our calculator's in degree mode, so I know it's in degrees. And that's our answer. See what else we got. Find the value of secant of 27.82 degrees. So here we're going back to, they gave us an angle. Hey, we have 27.82 degrees. This is our angle. When they give us an angle, right, we're trying to find the secant of that angle. The secant. Remember, anytime right after a trig function comes the angle, right? 27.82 degrees, right? You put that in your calculator. But there is no secant button in your calculator. So what do? Well, your calculator only has sine, cosine, and tangent. Hopefully you remember that, hey, the secant is just the it's just the reciprocal of cosine. So remember that secant of some angle is just equal to 1 over the cosine of that same angle. So this is going to be 1 over the cosine of 27.82 degrees. You just put it in your calculator like that. I would really recommend making this fraction bar in your calculator by hitting the green button alpha, then y equals, and enter. It gives you a nice little fraction bar. Then you can put a 1 up here, and then you just type in cosine of 27.82 degrees. 1 cosine of 27.82. My calculator is in degree mode, so when I enter in an angle, it's automatically going to be in degrees. And then it gives me this answer. 1.130686918. I don't want to put the whole thing in here. I want to use, I see it gave me 4 significant digits. I need to give it back the same. So the answer, the secant of 27.82 degrees is 1.131. All right, so you should have everything you need. All right.